The hum of the jet engines masked the quiet tension building in business class. Passengers settled in, eyes on their screens and coffees, until a confident black woman stepped aboard, tailored navy suit crisp, briefcase marked with embossed initials. She paused at row 3A only to find her seat already taken. A woman in a striking red dress lounged there, sunglasses perched, scrolling her phone as if the world belonged to her. The moment their eyes met, something shifted. Entitlement met authority, and silence turned electric. No one yet knew that the woman standing in the aisle wasn't just another traveler. She was the founder of the very airline they were flying. She had boarded quietly, the way powerful people often do when they no longer feel the need to announce themselves. Elaine Carter, 41, founder and CEO of Skylink Airlines, had built her empire from the ground up. Once a flight attendant, she'd spent years learning every detail of the business, from flight paths to passenger psychology. Success hadn't made her loud, it had made her precise. This morning was supposed to be routine, a short flight to San Francisco for a leadership summit. She had chosen to fly commercial, as she often did, to stay grounded, to remember the people she built her company for. But as she stood before her assigned seat, the irony struck her like turbulence. The woman in red didn't even look up when Elaine spoke. The tone in her voice, dismissive, edged with the assumption that her comfort mattered more, was one Elaine had heard all her life, in boardrooms, investor meetings, and even casual encounters with strangers who mistook her success for luck. Nearby passengers shifted in their seats, pretending not to listen but unable to look away. The cabin, moments ago calm and efficient, had turned into a quiet theater of judgment. No one knew who Elaine was, not yet. They only saw a black woman standing, waiting, and a white woman seated, defending what she believed was rightfully hers. In that still moment, before words became weapons, Elaine realized this wasn't just about a seat. It was about something far heavier, the invisible hierarchies that still divided the skies she thought she had conquered. Elaine steadied her breath, forcing calm into her voice as she showed her boarding pass to the woman in red. "Excuse me," she said, each syllable deliberate. "I believe you're in my seat." The woman glanced up with a practiced smile, the kind that carried more condescension than kindness. "I think you're mistaken," she replied. Her tone was soft but soaked in superiority. She waved vaguely toward the back of the cabin. "I'm sure your seat is somewhere back there." A few passengers exchanged uneasy glances. A flight attendant approached, sensing tension but hesitating when she saw the woman in red's designer bag and polished demeanor. Elaine handed her ticket over without a word, eyes never leaving the woman in her seat. The attendant looked from the pass to the seat number, confusion flickering across her face. "Ma'am," she said gently to the passenger, "this is seat 3A. It belongs to Ms. Carter." The woman's brow arched. "Well, I'm already here," she said, laughing under her breath. "Surely you can find her another spot." "Does it really matter?" The words landed like a slap, not just to Elaine, but to everyone who heard them. That quiet dismissal, so casual, carried generations of weight. Elaine could almost hear her grandmother's voice reminding her, "They'll test your patience before they recognize your worth." The attendant hesitated, torn between protocol and discomfort. The woman in red crossed her legs, settling in deeper, her perfume filling the air like defiance. Elaine remained still, her silence stronger than any argument. A man in the next row whispered to his wife, "Why doesn't she just move?" Another passenger muttered, "Maybe it's a misunderstanding." The murmur of assumptions spread like turbulence through the cabin, invisible but unmistakable. Elaine's mind flashed back to her. Early days at Skylink, the meetings where investors looked past her, assuming she was the assistant, not the architect. The times she had to smile through disbelief and prove again and again that her place at the table wasn't charity. It was earned. Now, in a space she had built from her own vision, she was being told again to take the back seat. The captain's announcement interrupted the standoff, his voice calm and distant. Unaware of the quiet storm brewing in 3A, the flight attendants exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to proceed without embarrassing anyone, as if the only person at risk of embarrassment was the one standing. Elaine finally spoke, her tone even but heavy with authority. "Please check your manifest again," she said to the attendant. "My name should be on it, under Skylink Executive." The attendant scanned her tablet. Her eyes widened. "Yes, Miss Carter, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize—" The woman in red blinked, frown lines etching across her forehead. "Wait, you're Elaine Carter?" Elaine didn't answer. She simply waited, poised, unflinching, her presence commanding silence. Around them, passengers pretended to scroll, but every eye was fixed on the moment. For the first time, the woman in red's arrogance faltered. Her fingers twitched on the armrest, her confidence draining like air from a punctured cabin. The hum of the engines grew louder, or maybe it was just the sound of reality catching up, and as Elaine finally took her seat, the balance in the cabin shifted. No one clapped, no one spoke, but something unspoken rippled through the air. The quiet, undeniable recognition of power reclaimed. The attendant's tablet refreshed, and the name glowed on the screen like a revelation. Elaine Carter, Executive Priority, founder of Skylink Airlines. The cabin fell silent. The woman in red froze, her smirk collapsing under the weight of realization. Her perfectly manicured hand hovered above her purse, unsure whether to reach for dignity or denial. "Wait, you're that Elaine Carter?" she whispered, the arrogance draining from her face. Elaine's expression didn't change. "Yes," she said softly, her voice steady but laced with something deeper. Not pride, not anger, but quiet exhaustion. Years of restraint folded into that single word. The attendant straightened, posture snapping into respect. "Miss Carter, I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding," she said, turning toward the woman in red. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move immediately." Every eye in the cabin was on them now. The red dress rustled as its wearer stood, face flushed, eyes darting for an exit that didn't exist. I didn't realize," she stammered, trying to compose herself. "It was an honest mistake." Elaine met her gaze evenly. "Mistakes happen," she said. "It's how we handle them that defines us. No malice, no triumph, just truth." As the woman gathered her things and slid toward another seat, Elaine finally sat down. The leather felt cool beneath her palms, the silence deafening. Across the aisle, a passenger whispered, "She owns the airline." Another murmured, "I can't believe it." Elaine looked out the window as the plane began to taxi, her reflection framed against the sky she'd fought to conquer. She wasn't thinking about the humiliation she'd just endured, or the looks from the other passengers. She was thinking about every time someone like her had been told to wait, to move, to settle, and how many more times it would take before that story finally changed. The engines roared, lifting the aircraft, and her resolve into the air. The rest of the flight unfolded in near silence. The woman in red sat 2 rows back now, her gaze fixed on the headrest in front of her, the confidence she'd worn like jewelry gone dull. The cabin crew treated Elaine with quiet reverence, addressing her as Ms. Carter with a tone that carried both apology and respect. But Elaine wasn't looking for either. At 30,000 feet with clouds like continents below, she reflected on how strange power could feel. Not loud, not sweet, but still steady, necessary. She thought of her younger self, struggling to find a seat in rooms where no one expected her to belong. Every humiliation had been a step on the same staircase, and now, even here, it seemed the climb wasn't over. When the plane landed, passengers waited for her to disembark first. The woman in red avoided eye contact, clutching her bag like a shield. As Elaine walked past, she paused, not out of anger, but something deeper. "I hope your flight was comfortable," she said softly, then moved on. No sharp words. No public shaming, just the quiet grace of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. Outside, the air was bright and clean. Her driver waited at the gate, the company logo gleaming on the car door. Her company. For a moment, she stood there watching the plane taxi down the runway, its silver wings cutting across the sun, and she smiled. Somewhere in that cabin, maybe someone would think differently the next time they saw a woman like her standing, waiting for a seat that was already hers. Because sometimes change doesn't begin with shouting. Sometimes it begins with silence that commands attention, with calm that exposes arrogance, and with dignity that leaves the world no choice but to look closer. And as the engines faded into the distance, one truth lingered like contrail against the sky. You can take a seat from a person, but not the ground they built beneath you.